Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Hi, we're back with Ruth Wysocki for part 2 of her interview. We'll pick it up where we left off. Today on the podcast, we're in California with someone who has a 30-year running career, national championships, Olympic finals, must have some great genetics because there's dad, brothers, husband, who all were elite runners. Today, welcome on the podcast, Ruth Wysocki. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, thanks for having me. I worked in a running shoe store for a while, and I worked for an electronics company. I had very slowly built back running, and that was when I told myself that I'd never run more than 60 miles a week. That was it. I will not run 60.5 miles, 60 cap. That's it. I was back to working full time. I was going for a run in the morning before work and going for a run after work. Just happy that I could run, but I was determined that I was never going to take the risk again of being in really good shape and having the rug ripped out from under me. And now I'm in my mid-20s. I'm done. I'm getting too old for this. Going into 84, it actually was Tom who said, I have an idea. He said, they're adding the 3,000 meters in the Olympics. And of course, because you're now 27 and too old and slow to run the 800 anymore, you should try to qualify for the Olympic trials. You got this new chance, 3,000 meters. And it's like, you're nuts. No. And he said, no, look, here's the deal. He had a way better chance of making the team than I did going into 84. We were racing well. Things were coming along. He said, you enjoy sometimes being able to go to these races with me. At that point, there weren't that many husband and wife combos.
Yeah.
And he said, we could be a husband and wife team that both qualified for the trials. That would make us marketable. A husband and wife, they both qualify for the trials. We'd be marketable, and maybe you'd get invited along to come with me more often.
Right.
They talked me into it. So I got in touch with Vince, and yeah, sure, let's go. The qualifying time for the 3,000 was 9:15 flat. I went to Mount Sac and I ran 9:15.4. And it was so hard for me to do that. And I didn't like running that many laps that I was like, I don't have 0.4 of a second more. No, that hurt. I didn't like it. I can't. And so the next week we went out and ran a 1,500 meter race, and I ran 4:13 and change. It was just a small meet, kind of time trial, whatever, at Cal Poly. And all of a sudden, I'm qualified for the trials in the 1,500. And thank God Almighty, I don't have to run the 3,000 anymore. And a funny story. I was training at UC Irvine. We were living an hour away from there. So I would just come in on the interval days. Daley Thompson would train there, Dwight Stones, Edwin Moses. One day, Vince said, we're going to do 12 400s in whatever time he said to run. I ran the first one, and it was very common that I didn't even really know Vince and I had a funny little way of communicating. I would run, and I could tell by his mannerism if I was on, off, whatever. I ran the first 400, and as I'm doing my little 2-3 minute, whatever it was in between, and I'm coming back toward the starting line, Dwight Stones had stopped his warm-up that he was doing and was standing next to Vince. They were talking, and he's looking at Vince's watch and the paper rewrites. So I ran another quarter, and Dwight stood there watching me run 400s. I finished the workout, and I went to take off my spikes and change shoes and cool down, at which point then Vince and I would talk about the workouts. As I walked over, Dwight looks at me and he says, you're going to make the Olympic team.
Sure.
And I was stunned. It turned out that first 400 I ran in 62. And I finished with a 62, but let's just say the rest of them were not 62.
Yeah.
was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Dwight Stones is a very good friend to this day. We're meeting him at a winery on Sunday, as a matter of fact. He and his wife were in the, and so just things started to happen. We'd adjusted our diet. I'd quit the full-time job that I had, and Tom was injured. I started running some 800s. And in May, we were down in San Diego for some other reason and found out there was this all-comer meet. And Tom was like, jump in the 800, just go for it. The gun went off. I ran the 800 the only way I know how. That's go for broke from the gun. And I ran 2:01:18, and my PR was 2:01:99 from 78. Couldn't believe it. Like, I can still run the 800s. That's when I thought, oh my God, maybe I could do this. And so went up to the Nationals in San Jose, ran the 800, got second behind Kim Gallagher, went into the trials, entered in the 8 and the 15. In the 800, probably the most amazing thing that happened in the semifinals of the 800, on Father's Day of all things, my instructions for Vince, you run the semi like it's a final, because if you don't, there might not be a final. And I ran the race, qualified for the finals. I was thrilled. I went out the stadium and was jogging a cool down, and I could hear Scott Davis's voice and the results of the heat, whatever, of the 800 in 8th place, 7th place, 6th place. And in 2nd place with a time of 1, and I didn't hear anything else. I'd broken 2 minutes. It was just, I probably looked like a fool out there dancing around where I was. And my immediate thought was, all I got to do is come back to the same thing in the final, and I'm on the team. Here you spend your whole life trying to break 2 minutes. It's okay, let's just go do it again, because we'll be in the Olympics if we do. And yeah, that's how it worked out. So I made the team in the 8th. Incredible. Kim Gallagher, when she decided to change gears, she's gone, but that didn't matter. I was ready to be done. And Vince and Tom were like, you should run the 15. I'm like, but I don't want to run the 15. I made the team. That's what, and they're like, no, you could get a PR. And Tom started the chatter of, you could make the team in the 15 also. And I'm like, no, you got to stop and think about this. Mary's going to win it. And there's no doubt. But Kim Gallagher had been chattering about, I'm going to beat Mary. I got her. I'm going to win the 15. And he says, here's the deal. 3 people make the team. And it was Tom that came up with the game plan to run for 3rd. I totally failed in my race plan for 3rd. And basically it played out. And I think, again, being the underdog, already being on the team in the 8, I always struggled with sitting back. I tended to always wanted to be in the front.
Right.
Yeah. Do too much of the work. And so for the first time, I actually sat back, and the plan was to, with 500 to go, get in the mix. And with 300 to go, you just head down that backstretch. There's no tomorrow. Just as I was hitting the 300 to go, Dwight Stones cleared the height that put him on the team. There was this eruption as it was time to go. We took off, and all I could think of was there's a whole field on our shoulders. As I pulled up on Mary, got a little ahead, then she pulled forward. All I could think of is, you're going to look really stupid now if you don't get in the top 3, because surely everybody's right behind me. And I had no idea that we had broken away. With 200 to go, I'm thinking of all these voices saying, if you're with her to 200 to go, you can beat her. And I'm like, yeah, pshaw. That was a long time ago. I remember in the last 200 seriously thinking about her amazing World Championships runs. And it was like, okay, hang on, don't back off. But as soon as we hit that straightaway, she's going to find another gear and be gone, and it's all over. And I sure hope I'm in the top 3. And we all know how that turned out.
It's crazy. Wow. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple things, and I will edit them out if we don't want to talk about it. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, so I saw Kim Gallagher. I think she was just a year or 2 younger, but I was at the Pennsylvania State Championship meet when she ran 4:42 as a junior or something. But we'll segue into performance-enhancing drugs. By 1984, and certainly going on through the rest of that decade, performance-enhancing drugs made their mark. There were disqualifications. There were people losing their titles. Was there anything going on in the women? Was there any hush talk in the women's sector about any of this?
Yes, much would come about later. There was always big suspicion around Chuck Debus and the Nature Right Track Club. You would hear rumors, you would hear stories, people would say things, and a lot of the time it's athletes who can't beat somebody that, well, then they must be on drugs. And there was many times when you were like, yeah, certainly could be, but you don't know. And I imagine people said it about me, and I know for a fact I was clean. And there weren't many performances that were of a nature that, like, if you work hard and you stay healthy, you can do this. Whereas the suspicion was more outside of the United States in the distance realm. But I did hear later that there were 19 positives at the U.S. trials. And they were all told basically to don't embarrass at the Olympics, be clean, and they didn't do anything. That became the story of years often, where you hear things about people and yet nothing happens. So, don't know. I believe the drug of choice, so to speak, back then was human growth hormone. There was no test for it. They didn't test for it. It wasn't until after 84 that we had really any out of competition drug testing. After the final of the 800, that's the first time I'd ever been drug tested in my life.
Let's talk about the experience then of making the Olympic teams. What happens in that process to you after you've made the team? Whatever's going to happen by the end of the meet happens. What happens with you?
It was interesting. There were some people that gave very good advice. And I remember Brooks Johnson being one of them. Don't feel like you need to go do something more. Just keep doing what you're doing. It's working. I can see some mistakes we made, probably working a little too hard between the trials and the games. I think the other thing for me, going into LA, I had no game plan. I had no real plans of any kind. I ran 1984 with no shoe contract. Tom had a shoe contract, and Brooks was kind enough to give me shoes too, because I was with him. That changed immediately. Signed with Brooks. But again, being with a smaller company that didn't have all the athletes, Nike and others, they had already had plans. They had these sorority houses that were hospitality places to go. If you were a Carl, a Mary, some of those people, they already had hotel rooms or other arrangements where they were things were going to stay very familiar for them. They were going to have great accommodations. All of a sudden, I'm on the team. There's none of that to be had. And we had rooms on the campus at USC, and this is funny now because it wasn't always like this, but our accommodations were, I believe, what was like married student housing. We overlooked the swimming and diving pool. I remember it being a 2-bedroom sort of apartment. So there's a small kitchen where they had the gas shut off because I guess they were worried about certain countries coming in and not knowing what they were doing. And there was a small living room. There was 1 bathroom and 2 small bedrooms. And so when I went into the bedroom, there were 2 bunk beds in there. They had 4 of us in each room. And the bunk beds, there was nowhere to even open a suitcase. You had to put your suitcase on the bed to open it. And 1 bathroom. Not all the people were actually staying there all the time. But the other hilarious one, and this is one of my souvenirs that made it out of the Olympic Village, our blanket was like a green army blanket, like rough. And I took it home with me because I thought nobody is going to believe that as a member of the U.S. Olympic team, this is my blanket.
Yeah, you're getting private bunkos blanket. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom and we were trying to find accommodation. Brooks had a house. Everybody else had hospitality houses there at USC. Brooks had a house in Hermosa Beach because they wanted to be at the beach, which was great when you wanted an escape, but not somewhere conducive to stay. So we started to look around, ask around, and found out that we could get a room in a frat house. It was the Kappa Alpha house. We rented a room for $45 a night, and it was the Skull house. chewing tobacco. And the guys there were super duper. They were thrilled to have me staying there. As well as the bathrooms down the hall, they'd make everybody leave when I wanted to go take a shower or anything. They'd make them be quiet if I wanted to nap during the day. But again, and much like my experience in Eugene in 76, spent way too much time walking back and forth to the village to go eat and I think definitely just the pressure got to me. Tom said both finals I ran in, he could just tell when the gun gate went off in the first 100 meters, it was not my day. Just trying too hard. It just wasn't happening. So it was very disappointing, especially now the 1500, realizing that was a race that was right in my wheelhouse and I was not competitive. When it was all over, we went to Europe for a couple weeks. And by then, that working a little too hard between the trials and the Olympics started to pay off. And I beat everybody that beat me in the Olympics. And I had some great European wins and PRs, which was fabulous. That was a great experience and definitely, okay, we got things to look forward to. Just the Olympics themselves were disappointing. I wasn't and picked the wrong time for that.
How long did it take to recover from that emotionally and mentally? Just
The Olympics themselves?
Yeah, the Olympic disappointment. Was it the success in Europe after that?
Yes,
Did you put right
absolutely. Absolutely. The first race I ran in Zurich, and they didn't have a 15 or what. Long story short, there wasn't really a race for me. They made me the pace setter for the women's 3000. They wanted me to run 68-second laps for 2,000 meters. And I just happened to have a very good sense of pace. And I ran 68, 68, 68, 68, 68 and stepped up the track. But after about 3 laps in, Dwight Stones and Doug Nordquist, they were on that high jump apron and they were taking notice. And I remember Dwight just yelling at me, steal it, steal it.
Don't step right for you.
Obviously, I looked comfortable. I looked good. And my thought was, but the meet promoter wanted me to run 5 68-second laps. Is he going to be pissed off if I don't stop? I don't need those momentary thoughts while you're doing it. And secondly, because the 3000 was not really my favorite thing to do. And it was my first race of 6 or 8 or whatever I was going to be running while I was there. I thought, what if I get so beat up doing that I run poorly in the others? And so I stepped off the track feeling good. And the promoter was so happy with me, he gave me a Longines watch as a bonus. And yeah, things just went on from there. Thankfully, with Tom's encouragement, don't do any of the work. You sit, you get yourself in position, and with 300 to go, tell him bye-bye, because at that point, running the last lap in 60 was just what I did. And that was enough to make things happen.
Nice. We'll talk quickly then about your master's career at W40. Ended up setting national record, winning a championship. What was the difference then in training at the end of your 30s that you could do?
I think what happened in my 30s, we had the whole infamous trip to South Africa in 88 that earned me a 4-year suspension. Again, had no intention of coming back, and then thought, I fought so hard to bring my name back. I'm running. I'm not going away. And ran in 92, made the finals of the trials, and realized, as my husband would say, you're poking it with a stick. You're doing the work, but you're giving 98% in an activity that people are giving 110. And you're wasting your time. I had a child by then. My husband wasn't racing anymore. It was like, you're wasting your time and everybody else's. It's enough. So I retired again, came back in 94. So 95 was one of those magic years again where everything worked, and ended up running in the world championships. That's a whole nother story. After 95 was basically okay, I'm going to race in 95. And if I can run at least, and I had a time in my mind, then I'll try for 96. And of course, 95 turned magical, and off we went into 96. And I had a hip injury that just struggled to clear up. I just, again, wasn't at my best at the trials, didn't make the team. I went to Europe, did a lot of rabbiting and stuff, which was really a lot of fun. And I told Tom, just 96 and I'm done. I promise. And I finished the 1500. And as I was disappointed walking away, knowing I could have done better if I'd been fully healthy. And Vince came up to me and goes, Ruth, do something for me. One more year. You can't go out like this. One more year, which became a few more. So that's how the Masters things came about. But I told him, I said, I'll do it. But being 40, being past my prime, so to speak, I want to enjoy some of the things I've always wanted to do, which is jump in some road races. So it was that I'll do it as long as I can run. So I got to do some things I'd always wanted to do, like Freihofers, Azalea Trail, some of those. My European summer was mostly rabbiting, which was pretty cool. You get to the point where the race hurts and you get to stop. And they give them well because of the road racing. Then that's when the training really changed. After that was like, I'm going to stay in good enough shape to be a good Masters road runner, but then, I'm done with the track things. That was nice.
I want to talk about some of the other people, both that were runners before you and after you, and the relationships you made with them. Can you talk about your decision to go to South Africa and how that impacted you?
Yeah, well, that's quite a story. In 88, I was 31 years old, racing. I'd been in a car accident in 88, which set me a little back and ended up fourth at the trials. The coaches, everybody was trying to get Kim Gallagher to give up that 1500 spot and let me have it because I was still getting better and better. And Kim would not give it up, and it was hers. So I was in Europe racing and started to get some scuttlebutt of this South Africa thing that they were looking to put together a tour group to run. They did say part of why they were approaching people like myself, James Robinson, and some of those that did go was there would be some risk involved, possibly a 1-year suspension, maybe something. And they didn't want to risk asking somebody to really injure a promising career. And so they were approaching people who maybe were toward the end of their career. And in talking to them, I was very intrigued with the reasoning of what they were doing and the thought that I always was of the belief that athletics, music, the arts, these are things where you live and what your leaders believe or whatever. These are things that bridge the gap. We can come together over these things, regardless of how our countries feel. And my thought was these.
How naive were you?
I know. But that thought, I got it.
Turned out that the people underestimated the risk and impact of going to South Africa on that tour.
Yes. It was interesting. I know there are some who probably disagree. I'll stand by my reasons for going. And that was the desire, the opportunity to see for myself, to be there and see. I struggled a bit with things like there are retirement plans invested in South African business. They're making money, yet we're not supposed to go there and run. We stayed in Holiday Inns and shopped at Woolworths and ate at the gas stations. You would see familiar things. And that's not to say we didn't see some things that were like, you got to be kidding. Occasionally in a park, a whites only drinking fountain, that kind of thing. But the bottom line for me was that camaraderie and the competition. And in talking to people that we would meet, that idea that with a talent as a runner, or even in other sports, but I look at some of the people that I met there, Alana Meyer, who went on to phenomenal things when they lifted these bands, and you could see her talent, right off the bat. But realizing that these people, they were doing what they wanted to do, trying to be as good as they could possibly be. And all they could ever do was race each other time and time again. And some funny stories of people talking to me on the stands, like they'd bet on the races because they knew all these people so well that they would place bets. Really met some amazing people. It was really bizarre because it was in October. So it was over and theirs was starting. So not really having the fitness level, but I feel good about having gone, seen for myself. A lot of the people that have made judgments don't realize how diverse the group was and how things were handled. I made the decision I thought best for me. I don't regret. And I have had people, we have South African friends who have since ended up in the United States, and people who have told me, you're a hero over there for
Wow.
having come and done this, and their appreciation. And like South Africans, like, you're that one that came and ran. So there was good responses and much fewer poor responses. But I think the big thing was that USA Track and Field, I do not think they appreciated that we pulled it off. So we were going to be made examples of, and they were going to let us know who's in charge. Honestly, I believe there was a possibility of being suspended for a year, but what's the likelihood that's going to happen? You come back, you explain yeah. Look at some of the other things other people have done. And so we were given a hearing that I felt that I went well prepared to speak candidly. And it was very obvious that the decision was already made. Their minds were made up. There was one, Frank Greenberg, they were letting us have it. One of the things I brought up was I would have agreed with a lot of the things you're saying, but I went and saw for myself. And this is what I believe sports stands for, blah, 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 blah. His response to me was, I knew somebody that went to South Africa 10 years ago, and they told me it was really bad. And we didn't get a fair chance to speak. There were times when I brought up phrases like law of the land allows me to travel there, people invest there, blah, blah, blah. And they said, we're USA Track and Field. We're a private organization. We make our own rules.
Those rules don't apply to us.
Laws of the land don't matter to us because this is our organization. So the 4-year ban came down, and we've talked about having kids. I'm 31. It's been nice. But the more the way it was handled, the angrier I got about how it was handled. And I wanted to clear my name, and this was just wrong. And so we went through the process of trying to fight, but of course they didn't even make it really open to appeal or much of anything. And then it got to the point where it became apparent that South Africa was going to be a part of the 92 games. And I think the feeling probably was, this isn't going to look real good if they can compete and these other people are all banned. So we had another kind of hearing, whatever it was. It was Good Friday, holiday traffic. I had to drive up to LA. I was very pregnant at the time. That would have been, Easter time. And my son was born in August. And went to this hearing and actually felt like the people on this panel asked very intelligent questions, wanted to hear what I had to say. I felt good about it. I thought, okay, somebody listened to me. So however it goes now, it goes. And that's that. And so they said, you'll have your answer within whatever time. But weeks go by and there's nothing. I finally contacted one of the people I knew that was on that hearing. And I said, I just surprised I haven't heard anything. And he goes, me too. He says, we were pushed that we had to have our report in X time, and we haven't heard anything. He says, so I'm angry that I put a lot of time and effort, especially into expediting things, and I got nothing. He says, let me check it out. And then he got back to me and he said, I'm very embarrassed, but I'm going to tell you what I was told. And that response was, we didn't think there was any hurry because she's pregnant. It's not like she was going to go run anyway. That became my determination. Now, we got to the fall of 91, and I was supposed to be suspended until October of 92. And I know exactly what they were doing is that suspension wouldn't end until after the Olympics so that none of us would have any possibility. Not that I thought any possibility anyway. They took care of that. Finally, it was coming toward the end of 91. I was told that it's just a matter of needing a rubber stamp at the convention, and that this is their recommendation that we be reinstated as of January 1st. And And I'm like, do I need to go to the convention then and say something? They're like, no, don't spend the money and have a baby. Don't spend the money or the time to go up there. This is a rubber stamp. There's no big deal. It's going to be in this private meeting with this committee or whatever, and it'll be a done deal. And one evening I get a call from someone I know that was at the convention and said, Ruth, you just got screwed. And I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, Stephanie Hightower. And most time I don't bother to say who it was, but I will. Stood up in front of the entire convention and basically shot down everybody for having gone on that tour and called me a racist in front of this whole for having gone. And that was the moment. Now, and then I was reinstated as of January 1st. And I'm like, I'm running. I'm not going to retire and go away. I'm running. You don't do this to people. So the career took off again. Yeah. So there we are.
That's great. It's a great story, and it's such a part of running history. It's not one that anybody's made a movie about. It's a great story. I don't think there's a book that covers
No,
that.
not now. I have some news articles. Someday I'll go through the whole box of stuff from that. It was interesting. I felt like I made what was a good decision, and I'm glad I went and did that and made my statement that, we're athletes, we're not politicians, or we're not the ones. They have no more chance of marching into the leaders' offices in South Africa and telling them what to do than I did. We just want to run and we want to be friends and we want to race and we want them to have the chance to race. I'm glad things opened up. Like I said, Alana Meyer to me was just the ultimate. Yeah, dude, you go, girl.
Of course, the U.S. had dual track meets with the Russians in the middle of the 60s while the Cold War was right on. And you're no stranger to barrier breaking and competing when there was no girls' team. And some of your colleagues and friends were there when someone had to go to the Cascade runoff and take the money and risk and get banned. And Jackie Hansen had to go to the ALCU and sue the Olympic Committee to get changes made. So bravo to you. It's a great story. Brave, courageous, competitive, and yet you're very gracious, grateful, and somehow humble through all this. You give the impression a little bit of how this happened to me and why was I so good? I just did what everybody can do, is what you come off as saying.
And part of it too, I just feel like if I could do it, anybody can. Now, I know I have blessed with some God-given talent that not everybody has. I've said this many times to people. When you are doing what I was doing, the goal is always to be better than you were before. And being a track athlete, there's a definite season where you take a break, you start over, and you go into that next season feeling that there's more in me and it's going to be better and it's going to be better. And sometimes it was and sometimes it wasn't. And I was blessed to have stumbled onto a coach who stood by me. I joke with him about our marriage for better or for worse, and richer and poorer, and sickness and in health, till death do us part. He was there. He was there when it was good. He was there when it was bad. I just felt like I was always trying to be better than I was before. And there comes a point where better is an Olympic team, where better is something not everyone gets the chance to do, but you just always believe there's something better and I'm going to go get it.
I think that's very eloquently what we're all thinking about and all experiencing on this topic of running over long periods of time. Talk about, I mentioned some of the people that you may know. What are some of the relationships you have? Did you meet the road racers like Ann O'Day? Did you meet Terry Anderson Jordan was maybe ahead of your time and running in the mile, and Jackie Hansen was ahead of your time, but you certainly crossed paths with them. Or any of those people that are still in your life?
Jacqueline Hansen is a very good friend. Her husband, Tom Sturak, was my agent. And actually, when he became an agent, he called me his first dollar bill. I was the first athlete that he represented. And Jacqueline and I, we just go back a long time. And her husband actually ran masters with my dad. We were just together this last weekend at a reunion thing. Jacqueline is spectacular, amazing person. But like I said, meeting Doris Brown and then being able to call her a friend, Francie, a lot of the people of that era. Some of the road racers that I got to know were because they were Tom's friends, because he crossed over to the roads more than I did. People that are friends, Craig Virgin was just on the phone with him for an hour on Sunday, and we're having lunch and wine with Dwight Stones and his wife on this Saturday. But these people that are friends that Steve Scott and I go back forever. There's more names than I could even think to mention. Some of the road people I didn't know as well, but particularly a lot of the road guys that were Tom's friends were still really close with. I was on a Zoom call on Sunday. Dave Ross led a group. We're like a precursor to the Olympics, and Ron Tabb was on there, and Bill Rogers was on there, and Benji Durden. And so it's cool to call them friends. And then a few people that went beyond running, Greg Gaines, Kathy Johnson, who was in the gymnastics team, people from other sports that I've been blessed to get to spend time with. So yeah, it's a very cool fraternity, I guess you'd say.
Very cool. All right. So we'll come up with something to wrap this up, and any final thoughts of you. But before we do that, a couple things off the record. It would be great if you think some of these supremely elite athletes in the class with you would enjoy doing this. I'd love to talk to Dwight Stones and Steve Scott, but I don't have a way to get to them because I'm
okay. And then how?
guys. We'll publish this in August. There'll be a couple episodes. If you enjoyed it and say, yeah, you can talk to this guy. He's not that much of an idiot. It'd be great. I wanted to ask you about your surgery. You've had has your knee come back and been a part of your life and your medical history again?
Yes. Yeah, I had knee replacement just over a year ago. Actually, Jacqueline Hansen was fabulous in what to expect and encouraging me. It's not a pleasant recovery. It's not for the faint of heart. I wish I hadn't had to go through it, and I never want to go through it again, but I've come out the other side. Jacqueline had both her knees done, and she really made sure and stood by my side. She's since gone through a shoulder reconstruction, and we're always there for each other. I've had a lot of people ask me about it that have had it done or are considering getting it done. But yeah, it was not fun. It'll never be the same, but I can walk like a normal person. There's some stiffness at times, more surrounding things than the knee itself. But my husband and I got to where we really enjoy hiking and have been looking forward to getting back more seriously into that. On the 1-year anniversary of the surgery, I did go for a 10-mile walk, and it is hilly where I live. So there were hills involved. Just the fact that I can get up every day and do something. I walked today. Tomorrow I'll be back on my elliptigo, and just happy to be out there moving. Fortunately, maybe whatever, don't have anything left to prove as a runner. So I don't miss the running as much as I thought I would. As we were talking about, still have a lot of very good friends and relationships from that I appreciate, many of whom hobble around as well. So those friendships haven't gone away. The people haven't gone away. The love of the sport hasn't gone away, although there are sometimes things happening that make me angry. But yeah.
I don't want to take it down too far, but what happened to the outlets for your competitive drive now that you're out of competition?
I think sometimes it gets maybe channeled into some things that other people are doing. I told you, when you're doing it, you're always trying to be better than you were before. And I think that my first realization was at about age 35, when I realized I'm still strong, I'm still fast, I still believe I could do things that unfortunately I've never quite had the chance to do. But that ability to turn over, that ability to shift gears from 35 on, just that you can't play games. You can't sit back, surge, do whatever. You needed to go run hard, and you could still do a lot, which made the road racing such a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
To just go run, and it was something new, and you could accomplish things. But I think ultimately, as a runner, I didn't really have anything left to prove. It's not like I was going to turn into a marathoner or do anything. I'd love to run, didn't feel any desire to get in a race or anything. I'm not jumping a 5K now then or whatever in my 50s. I was just happy to get out the door and be able to run. And that was fine. I had some things happen running. I tended to trip and fall a little more often than I should. I don't fall down when I'm walking. And fortunately, I haven't fallen down off that elliptical either. So I'm content. Yeah, there's times when part of me wants to go for a run, but that outlet we had with the hiking, we've done the Grand Canyon, we've done Mount Whitney, it's something my husband and I can do together, which is funny. We were both runners, but we really couldn't do it together. He was too fast and ran too far.
Good for you. It's very nice to hear. You're almost make it a negative sounding thing. You're just too well adjusted through all these challenges we all have in life. You have come out the other side with a great career, a great perspective on it, and ability to tell stories, and your appreciation, gratitude, and vividness is really nice to see.
I've been able to surround myself with wonderful people, starting with my own family. Tom and I had discussions when we got together. At the time, I was hurt and he was running well. What would happen if the shoe was ever on the other foot? Never thinking that would really happen. I remember when we bought our house in Canyon Lake and knowing we could have bought a lot more house than we did. I remember he said, if everything was taken away, I want to still be able to make that house payment working at McDonald's. I don't want to lose it because I'm not making that kind of money. He would say to me, and again, I come from a wonderful family that would have probably said similar things, but there were times when Tom would say things like, don't believe your own press. And like I said, we had talks about it could all be taken away tomorrow. Step up a curb wrong, get hit by a car. I don't know, who knows the things that could happen. And if running was taken away, what do you got? I think I always knew. And again, I retired 3 or 4 times. So it was taken away or I took it away. Life was still good. Yeah. If it's gone, any one particular thing in your life, if it's gone tomorrow, what you got? What you got left?
Yeah. It is sometimes scary with prodigy kids in music, performing, sports, or anything, that sometimes it looks like they're one bad fifth of a second away from their whole life crashing. Yeah. And that wasn't the way for you. That's great to hear. Thank you very much for your time, Ruth.
You're very welcome.
It's been very charming. When I started this, it took me a little while to break into reaching some female runners. And you're such a great memory for, I know, everybody like me who was running in the 70s saw you. And it's so great to hear in your own voice your stories. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, you're very welcome. I do have stories.
Yeah, I think the Ruth Wysocki story could be written, and there's a lot of sidelines. And with the history of the sport that came along with your career, there's so much there. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.